into the online broadcast network, AfterBuzz TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AfterBuzz TV, the destination for TV superfans, producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. The sound of that can only mean one thing. We're back in the village. And we need information. We have Steph Z.
Hey guys, how's it going?
We have Meredith Placco.
Hey everyone, what's up?
And of course, Phil Svitek. If you haven't already done so, do subscribe to our podcast. You want to. I know the village isn't always cool, but you know what? Join the village, at least for the next couple of weeks.
That's what they want you to do, because once you join, you'll never leave.
We should totally have that option. Like once people subscribe to this show, they can't like unsubscribe. They're stuck.
Well, we'll give them methods at the end of how to unsubscribe.
Right.
If they want. By the way, huge reception for the first episode that we did. This is our second one. We've got 15 more after this, so a lot to look forward to. And thank you, 601 Society, for supporting us. And there is that meetup on April 17th, 2015, with special guest Darren Nesbitt, who plays number 2 in It's Your Funeral, which obviously we'll talk about when we get there. We'll try to keep this as little spoiler-filled as we can. Inevitably, there will be some spoilers. We apologize.
This show's like 50 years old. Come on,
Almost,
guys.
yeah.
Hey, I'm still watching.
I know. That's why, but we'll keep the spoilers relevant to each week's show. How about that?
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's right. And so today, of course, we're talking about Chimes of Big Ben. And, learning from last time, I want to start with kind of the backstory, and I'll do a quick roundabout this time, and then we'll get into the story.
Roundabout.
So, obviously, there's a huge debate of what episode number this is, because it was actually filmed as the 5th episode. There's no secret about that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But I prefer it as episode number 2. And in the airing episode, it was episode number 2.
It didn't feel like a second episode. Like going into it, I'm like, I feel like I'm missing something. Feeling a little offbeat here. But I think a lot of that could be given to the very disjointed production quality of this week's episode.
Yeah, so speaking of that, it was primarily filmed in studio, back at MGM, rather than on location. So, whether it's the beach, whether it's them playing chess, and all these different things, it's in the studio, so it doesn't quite feel as much. And they reused a lot of shots, so the helicopter shot was reused and everything else. So
I have to say, as seeing this episode for the first time, and this is my first time watching as it being episode 2, I kind of don't agree with you guys. Like, I kind of like that this was episode 2, because the fact that it was like, he's going to try and escape. Mm-hmm. He's going to try and find someone he can trust. It. So, like, instead of playing that out, it's like, okay, right away, he's trying to outsmart everybody and he's going to, like, get involved. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like, yes, maybe if it was episode 5, like, I don't know what the other ones are yet, so maybe it would make more sense as episode 5. But I like that. Like, from the end of the first episode, like, that he's going to try and do this. Mm-hmm. So having him try and do this and failing, or thinking he succeeds and then failing, I think was kind of awesome to see right away, than waiting. And honestly, I think, too, like, I am so one of those people when I watch TV, it's like, I'm like, wait a minute, that window wasn't open that continuity is off. The disjointed didn't bother me so much, because there was so many things happening that I was so focused on, like, what does this lead into this, mm-hmm. And the village just looks weird altogether. So I was just like, okay, like, I wasn't so shocked that, like, you could tell, don't get me wrong, you could tell, but it didn't, for me, following the story, it didn't bug me as much. As soon as the helicopter scene, that was like the big red flag. I'm like, I feel like we've seen this exact same thing before.
Yeah.
But,
well, I think, one of the reasons why it's nice is that it's one of the more straightforward plots of the entire series, and it also, in many ways, parallels Arrival with number 8, who was originally supposed to be number 7, but they didn't want to use number 7 because it was too close to number 6, and it disproves Steph Z's theory.
Yeah, throws my theory. But I have another theory. Because the only other woman that we see is number 38. So did the 8s play?
Well,
maybe.
no.
We'll continue.
The older woman that we see in this episode. You know what I'm talking about?
but then last week's woman was number 9.
Was she?
Wasn't she?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Remember, we had a whole
goes that
discussion.
theory.
6 switches to be
Into
number
9.
9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If she would, oh yeah, that's right. The odd even. If
And-
she
and
would have been
6.
number 7, I would have been convinced.
It would have been
Odd and even.
Yeah. Well, I want to say one thing though about the disjointed filming and editing was, it really actually helped bring me in to a very Orwellian situation where I didn't know what was going on at times. Like you said, it is one of the more straightforward episodes, but because of how it's cut, you feel very put out. And uncomfortable throughout everything, and especially with the opening sequence in it. I know we will probably talk like that later, and I'll drop into that later. But it's just the whole episode really just made me feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of uncomfortability, Leo McKern, he's one of the only number 2s to actually play in multiple episodes, right? He plays in Once Upon a Time and also Fallout. But Patrick McGoohan didn't quite like him. He liked his acting, which is why he kept him, but personally, they didn't quite get along.
That's amazing because it shows that that makes me wonder how much of that animosity, that back and forth, was actually between them not really caring for each other.
Right. I think though a lot of times that you have that factor, people that can work together, like some of the greatest bands, like the Beatles, like they didn't get along, you know what I mean? Like John Lennon and Paul McCartney, like they didn't get along, but together as a band, they were awesome. Pink Floyd, like a lot of, maybe it's just a British thing, but like a lot of people, you know what I mean? Like I feel like some people, and I actually give them a lot of credit that they can speak to that and they can see like, okay, our working relationship is really good, but as soon as the cameras are down, get away from me.
But you have to, but that's got to at least be some good motivation for the actors to be
Right.
like, you know what, I can be a little smarmy and I can be a little smug when I'm shutting you down. And there's some satisfaction to that as a viewer, kind of like knowing that. But no, I agree. It's like, I feel like I'm on this whole kick right now, especially I'm like, I could not like you as a person, but I can work with you professionally. And that's how adults work. And that's good to see that even our silly guys from 40 years ago can manage that. But I don't know. I felt some tension there. I felt some tension between them, and I loved it though.
And in Once Upon a Time, I won't give anything away, but you really see it because it almost they become childish both together, and it's gonna be that's something to look forward to.
Wait, when do we get to watch that one?
It's the penultimate episode, so not for a while. Not for a while.
Little hot second.
And of course, the episode was directed by Don Chaffee, who we spoke of at length last time, and he, he's back in alliance with Nadia Gray, who ironically plays Nadia in the episode.
Yep.
Which is great to see. I bet she did a wonderful job. There's obviously tie-ins to Danger Man and things like that. Speaking of Danger Man, Richard Wattis, the Colonel. He was in Danger Man, so that's why the parallel between Danger Man and Prisoner is just, you can't help but make it because they're reusing so many different things.
Yeah, it's not even just actors; they're reusing the same characters. I mean, this is the extension. This is the extension of Danger Man. This is what happens next.
Yeah. And number 2 had an assistant that was kind of in the script, played by Chris Benjamin. And he was also in Arrival, but because they moved this episode to be number 2, they cut him out a lot because of that fact. They didn't, he plays somebody different in the original episode, and so they didn't want him to be kind of seen. And interestingly enough, he was revoiced by Robert Riley, who's a dialect coach, and he provided voice work for episode 5, 7, 10, 11, 12, and 15.
I want to know why.
Yeah, I know.
Like, was his voice or his accent too strong, and would that let us know where the village is? Like, is that what they were worried about?
No, it's just Robert Riley is known to be an amazing dialect coach, and he can do all these various things. And so I feel like he was just kind of, when you need post-production work and you're there, especially, now ADR and stuff like that is so simple.
Right.
But then it must have been, fairly hard. And so you're like, okay, well, can we get this guy, Christopher Benjamin, to come in, or we can just have this guy who can do any voice we really need him to, and he'll just redub it in 5 minutes for whoever we need.
Right.
So that's
Okay.
what
Yeah.
I feel ultimately it came
So
down
it had
to.
nothing really to do with his voice, just maybe it needed to be redone and this guy could do it all.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with like his accent or anything.
I mean,
like
he
that.
redubbed Once Upon a Time in America,
Okay.
for some of the people.
Oh,
Fair enough.
That's
right.
an iconic movie.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of talking in there, so that must have taken him 5 minutes too. Okay, so Vincent Tilsey brought the imagination McGoohan and Mark Steen wanted. So he hadn't written much for ITV before, but this is his episode. This is the one that he wrote, and whatever else. So and there's a lot of psychotherapy in this episode, right?
There really is. I mean, like going back to even just from the beginning opening sequence to, we see Nadia in the room, and then later on we see kind of like a hallway of people sleeping. There's just a lot of references showing us that people, they go to different lengths to get people indoctrinated into the village. And I really like a lot of the almost like Clockwork Orange elements that they had put into this. It was definitely had the mark of a 1960s show on it.
Absolutely. And interestingly enough, he went into psychotherapy eventually in 1973 after having written Life and Death of Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
Correlation?
Right.
I don't know. I can't verify.
I mean,
That's a jump.
well, yeah, I mean, that actually, it could be a lot of different correlations. He could have, like, in investigating that to write that piece, it could have drove him crazy. Or people could have been like, maybe his book was so spot on, they have to make him feel crazy because they don't want that to be out in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of, it's very interesting.
It's so funny. When I was reading this note earlier, I kind of missed this comment, and I was like, oh, at 73, he became a psychotherapist. I'm like, that's an age to change your career. Very interesting.
I don't quite know
Yeah,
the
it's
age he
like,
actually changed.
no.
So there you go. And, he was the one who had, wanted to put the alcohol as a punishment, not having alcohol in the village as a type of punishment, because obviously there's so many other drugs that get used in trying to figure this out. And there you have it, the backstory of this episode. So without further ado, see, much quicker.
Wait, so time out though.
Yeah.
About this alcohol thing. See, I read something different into the alcohol thing. I read that because this is more like a religion or a cult or something like that, and a lot of that belief, like you're not supposed to drink. So I totally read that as, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like they
I
can't have the alcohol, and then, which was crazy because I would think that they would want people to have alcohol, because if they have alcohol, it's more conducive maybe to having a good time, so they wouldn't try and escape. They wouldn't try to go against the system.
But that's
You're
only
like,
if you're
no.
a happy drunk. I think
That's
not
true.
having alcohol keeps you from being belligerent and going out of control.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
Yeah.
since I'm the person that is like, ooh, let me have a drink
See,
and let's have a
happy
good time.
drunk, sad drunk.
Wow, we're never. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh God, I'm so sad. I'm stuck in the village forever. I'm just gonna break this bottle and break this window and destroy
That is so
everything.
funny how like two people can take that
Yeah.
like that.
Well, that's the entire series.
Well, yeah, totally. But yeah, that's how I kind of read
that's
that as like a churchy kind of religious.
I read it similar because of
Reference.
communism. I figured, they probably like a lot of cult or like really dictator-esque level political groups are kind of
Right.
like no alcohol, no, like look at North Korea,
Right.
no fun, no alcohol. That's kind of how I was looking at. That's a way to control people.
Yeah, wow.
And you would think that I don't want to jump ahead on the episode, but there's a scene later on where there's alcohol being exchanged. I thought
You're talking about with the Colonel, right?
with the Colonel that you would think he would taste. There's no alcohol in here. That's how I thought he was going to figure out.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting point.
Also, too, and I don't know why this is happening for me, and I could be so off. And I don't know if it's just because last week that dress cape for number 9 seemed Snow White. But again, when we first see Nadia, and again, I was like, oh, Sleeping Beauty. There's going to be something.
Well, she
like, there's
was, yeah.
Yeah,
but
she
there's
was.
something fishy, like Like all the princess stories have like some sort of loophole. You know what I mean?
What if they secretly were huge Disney fans?
Maybe.
Like they could be.
It could be possible.
Yeah.
Disney owns everything. Disney didn't own this show. No, I'm just kidding.
They could have. Who knows?
Yeah.
One day.
Yeah.
So let's go back to you obviously made the point, Meredith, about the opening, and right. So we've condensed the what we saw last time and added on to it, and it's so disjointed and yet so. But let's start with you, and then we'll go. I really want to hear Steph Z's interpretation of this because first time I ever saw an opening, I was like, huh?
Yeah, like we see how number 6 goes through his resignation process, but we're also given this very strange psychosomatic, psychotropic drug sequence that made me sit back and like, are my eyes okay? Like, did I, what's going on? Like, they just kept throwing images and beats and other imagery within it that just kind of made me question, like, did I miss an episode? Am I watching the right one?
Because you're like, because you're very confused. Is this part of the episode?
Yeah,
or is this still an opening?
Yes.
That's kind of how I felt. I was a little bit like, Phil told me to watch these in this order, but like, does he know that I haven't seen everything? And did I miss something going on here? But I also, I mean, like, I do like that, you know, it makes it clear. Because I feel like some episodes with the pilot episode, like the intro definitely changes like how this one does, but it makes it clear that this resignation is like what we're getting at here, the information of the resignation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and it just drills that in again. But yeah, I did. I felt a little bit, I enjoyed it though. It made me like right away be like, okay, what's going on? You know what I mean? Like, I like that. They kind of like dangle the carrot and you're just like, what's happening here? So I liked it.
It also set up a good, for me, it made me understand that had been some time had passed from when he was at the village to this episode, that it's obviously not just waking up the next day, that, you know, made me feel like there was a little bit of a time shift, you know, a couple weeks or so.
Absolutely, and you know, when he does wake up, we see him totally different. You know, he's still trying to be an individual and all these different things, but now he's finally got like kind of a nightgown.
Yeah.
His rebellion, he puts the radio in the fridge as a form of non-violent protest rather than breaking it like last time.
And he does a really interesting way of seeming like he's slowly becoming one with the village, but then he'll, like you said, he'll do minor rebellions, and just the way, like how he'll sit at the edge of the desk versus taking a seat, or you know, putting the radio, you know, turning it out in other scenes as well. But there are a lot of times that I'm like, you know, he does the be seeing you just so seamlessly, like, oh, be seeing you. That's just slowly becoming one with peoples.
It's funny too, because where I went with that, with the alarm clock in the fridge, was that he was so shooken up last episode, like why, like where, why, you know, but I feel like he's settling down into his spy-like behavior and being like, I can't have this, because if I'm frazzled, I can't figure out how to go. So I feel like he was like, okay, like I need to like get a grip, figure it out, like this alarm clock is driving me crazy, I'm going to take care of that and I'm going to continue on. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like he got to the point where he knew where freaking out and yelling and trying to run, whatever, it was not going to work. So he was, you know, taking a different approach.
Absolutely. You know, you try different strategies and all, you know, and that's one of the things I wrote down, you know, he's trying new tactics, and which, by the way, so is the village, hence the new number 2.
Yeah.
Want a broken man. He doesn't want a man in fragments. He wants him to give himself wholeheartedly. And going back to the psychotherapy, you know, you will be cured.
Yeah.
Like as if he has a disease.
Right.
A disease of like, and this episode really hits home to me is it's almost very American in a lot of ways, and in the way that the communist witch hunts were, that you have to be pure in your love for the country and your patriotism, and they want to cure him of his what they feel are unpatriotic thoughts by wanting to resign. And there's a lot of correlations in this episode specifically to a lot of the writings that came out of America in the 60s and 70s and you know, pre-Cold War and Iron Curtain, that it's weird, I guess, for me, because while I've read a lot of British literature, not a lot from that time. It never really dawned on me how much they thought like we did.
Yeah.
Or maybe this is even a commentary on America for all we know.
It could be, that's certainly one of the possibilities. And going, you spoke at length about Big Brother last episode, and it couldn't be more evident, right? It's a very funny line of like, even the way he dresses is an act of defiance.
Right.
But think about that, like, that's pretty creepy.
Yeah.
Here's a man watching another man dress.
Yep.
Yeah. See, I go to add to your point, like, I go still to, I mean, yes, American makes more sense, and clearly he's a spy for some agency, but I keep going to religion. It's like somehow that, like, if the way that a lot of the more religious groups are, it's like, if you don't believe what I believe, there's something wrong with you. And people try and push that on. And I see a very strong correlation between that.
Yeah. Well, I don't think he's in America. I just think that the work of The Prisoner as a whole is a commentary of
what happens in
America. And by proxy,
Right.
probably Britain at the time. Just this is just a, and I'm always wanting to jump ahead. I'm trying to stay on track here, but I really feel overall with the, I don't want him in fragments. I want him as a whole person, meaning I want him to give himself fully to me is very much a, it's just creepy. It's just such a creepy statement. You see serial killers say those things, and to think that the government in itself wants that, it's a very, very, very
Harsh reality.
harsh reality, exactly, where at the end of the day, like, you have this one man fighting against this great big brother who's gonna watch over him all the time.
But one of those things, people always, it's so easy for people to define good and evil for themselves because, in your eyes, there is a good and evil. But at the end of the day, right, you're talking about patriotism.
Yeah.
Patriotism isn't bad.
No.
But taking to an extreme, yes, it is.
And
that to me, that defines evil. It's just something, it's just that otherwise good human behavior taken to such an extreme.
history is always written by the victors, and that's a quote as old as at least a couple years ago when I read it. It's way older than that. But that being said, if you are looking at the government, the village, at the operatives and upper standing, they see no wrong. They see we have secrets that we need to protect, or if we're of the communist, origin, we have secrets that we need to get out of them to protect ourselves. For them, that's not a bad thing. That maybe some of their methods are not good or evil, but for them, they're doing the right thing for themselves. For number 6, he's doing the right thing for himself by protecting himself.
Right.
And ironically, this number 2, for me, was seemingly the least harmful, right? He had a sense of humor. He was slightly clownish himself, and he said, they tend to leave out those things, but they were very important to him. So it's almost like he didn't mind the individuality of him as long as he was cooperative.
Yeah.
Right.
I think he saw the value in minor victories.
Yeah.
I think there is something to be said that if I can give a little and get a little in return, eventually I'll get him to crack. Where other methods might want to be total
Aggressive.
Yeah, total
like that.
annihilation.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And speaking of moves and how great was it the chess scene played on so many different levels. You're a fool, number 6. No point in being uncooperative.
Right.
But then explaining the role of the bishop.
Yeah.
And also, I heard in there that, the whole regiment word, and I feel like that's what really triggered number 6 to know that, like, everyone there had some maybe important job outside, and for some reason they were all taking that. Like, I feel like he was like, what army were you a part of? Like, he was really, again, thinking maybe he trusts this person, that he can get some more information about his whereabouts. But again, he falls flat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the one line, do you know more moves than 7?
Yeah, absolutely.
Referencing, like, do you know, because we don't have a number 7. And so it to me, it was kind of like, and again, thinking of this in out of order, like, is there another character that has tried this before? Is our unknown 7 that's never really, because we never do get a number 7, is maybe that was someone who escaped once before.
It could have been, and you don't always need a body, as they say. And to me, what was ironic about that was, okay, he just beat a man in chess in 7 moves. Quite impressive, right? And yet, the knowledge of only having 7 moves in this case with number 2 is a detriment, right? Because he can't think further than that. So I found that really interesting.
We should have a chessboard right
I know, we should.
We'll play sometime.
Yeah. Checkmate.
Nadia's arrival. So I really liked your Sleeping Beauty perspective on this.
Because it was very, like if you just went and took somebody, it just looked too perfect, the scene almost to me. And I mean, maybe again, that's because it's just jointed and how it was shot, whatever, but it seemed too perfect. And again, like, I don't know why, like the Snow White thing from the last episode stuck out so much. So I guess maybe it just triggered something in there. And I feel like with all these princesses, there's like, you need the specific thing to make it better. There's some kind of poison or betrayal. And I feel like that's somehow gonna come back around. You guys laugh every time I say
No,
it.
I just think it's such a fascinating. I've never heard this theory or thought of it, and I'm laughing because it's like I just love it. I just love again. I said this last week. I love your perspective on this because one, you're looking at this from a very modern day. You've got 40 years of history on this show,
right.
and the idea that we can just subvert our own conscious on this. But then there is some truth to what you're saying, I mean, when she comes, she's laid out, she's all asleep, and she has to be woken up, and
to the whole village, we've talked about it. Is it a resort?
Yeah.
Yes, but it's not a good resort. And so, to that point, here she's going to be, in theory, right? If she is a prisoner, here she is. Yes, even if she wakes, she's still not going to know the truth.
But it's so crazy because if you think about it, when you go to, is it a resort or is it a village? I bet you, maybe this is crazy, but if you asked like 20 people here, like, sure, like they're not making them do yet crazy things at this village. So if someone was like, hey, you can go to the village and you have a free place to stay and you have a beach and you have someone wake you up every day and you have someone drive you around every day, some people would be like, sure, sign me up. Like, it doesn't seem like a wrong place yet. Like, it does. There's so much wrong with it. Don't get me wrong. But it doesn't seem like a horrible...
So you're saying no use in being uncooperative.
No, I get being uncooperative because you don't want to be there and you don't want to be a number.
But or make the best of what you have. I mean, it was breached in this episode where do people choose to come here? Is this what they want? Or are they forced to be here? Are they all like number 6? And then, ultimately, like, if you're a lifer... you might as well just roll with it.
Like,
make it easier on you.
Are some people like the honorable discharge people get to go there too, and then also the people that resign and don't tell us why that we need information from, or is it like all people that are there against their will? It's not clear.
Or how many of them are plants? How many of them are at what point? I'm starting to question: is everyone a player on the stage where number 6 is the only?
Yeah, is it everyone versus number 6?
Yeah.
Because it is clear that Nadia is, taking him for a ride.
Was it clear?
Yes.
She's too perfect.
She was too perfect. And then it was like the swimmer. No. And then, I don't want to jump everywhere to the whole episode, but it was so like...
They set her up as what we use the term Mary Sue. Yeah. This almost perfect female character that is written to be the idealized of everything to advance the story without really having to advance the plot.
Well, for me, as soon as she said that she resigned too, the way she delivered that for me was like, oh, they're just trying to get him to tell her, like, of course, let me introduce someone that's really similar to you so you guys can bond and share what your experience was and why did you resign and why did I resign? And then they get the information they want from her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's so many similarities. I mean, because he goes the other way. He classifies her as Russian. Yeah. No, Estonian. So Russian.
Yeah.
And that's an act that, I love the prisoner and things like that, and I never want to go against them, but that's an act of ignorance to me.
Yeah.
Because he's classifying her.
Well, I also think that he was baiting her because at that time, Estonians would have been very angry at being called Russians, and she didn't really fall for it. And we also see her kind of slip up later with like, "Oh, Big Bill," like, "Oh no, honey, no, it's Big Ben. It's okay, sweetheart." But "Oh, okay, Big Ben. No, but I'm your Big Bill." Like, I kind of saw where he might have started fishing for. Like, I don't think number 6 is not an idiot. I don't think he was gonna flat line fall for her antics. I think he was fishing, but I think maybe there's a semblance where his hope got a little too above his level-headedness, and he thought for a second.
And I get it, regardless of Russian or Estonian, just the act of, because he was very much, when he first came to the village, right, he was much more defiant than her.
Yeah.
And so he'd been like, no, you cannot just classify me, I am Nadia or whatever,
Yeah, and he's just like, okay.
But also, the thing that stuck out for me was, I know we're jumping around, but he kind of stuck up for her and wanted her to be safe, which led me to believe, did he resign? Like, is there a woman that led him to make a bad spy decision that got him in some sort of heat, and that's why he resigned?
Or is it just because it's the 60s and all TV and media at that time, men had this weird, like, overtly protective.
She really wasn't dead?
Yeah, she really was not. They just were, it was just a weird protectiveness.
Yeah. But it was very, it was like he was trying to get information. He didn't 100% trust her, but yet he wanted to protect her.
Well, he also needed information, right?
Yeah.
There's a scene that was cut out, and I think it was cut out for a number of reasons. He was doing astrology, and a lot of the shots they were using was from 2001: A Space Odyssey, and so, that would have made it even more disjointed and similar and weird. But it gave him too much power, the prisoner, because he was trying to figure out where he was in the world, where the village was, and so I like the idea that she needed to have that power, and he needs her help, and he needs to bait her to be able to get off this village.
Right.
Yeah.
So I really like that.
Yeah, no, I think Nadia was a very interesting character, and she continues to be a very well played character throughout the rest of the episode.
Absolutely. And one, again, speaking of scenes that work on so many different levels, the beach scene, right?
Yes. Because
if you're thinking about it, here's number 2 sitting, and he has no regard for that she's about to just swim, and obviously they have their own measures, and they stop her from doing so, but you would wonder, why isn't he anticipating, like, hey, don't go swim too far, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's just there talking.
He's not worried.
Exactly.
Which made me also start to question her motivations, or how assured the village is of their safeguards. Like, he's like, she's not going to get anywhere. That's fine. Well, we've got measures. Or I took it as he knows exactly that she's not going to, like, she's going to play her part out,
Yeah.
Number 2?
Yeah, number 2 with
Oh, see, I took it as they were, like, in cahoots the whole time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was like, because he knew, it was like, try and swim, get caught. Okay, now we know that you're a swimmer. Okay, how can we put our heads together? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
That's how I took it.
There you go. And, but one of the more interesting parts of that scene, as we talked about, McGoohan versus McKern in that scene, talking about the global village and who the prisoners are. I mean, this... let's talk about the ideas of this. This
is a really fascinating concept to me. So in 1962, Marshall McLuhan coined the term the global village. And it was at this point we started to see the advent of the internet, not as we know it, but between electricity, phone communication, and the very, very first inklings of the internet, we started to realize that the world was not a small we weren't just small little individual pockets. The entire world now was one entire global village in which we had almost instantaneous communication with one another, and the idea that there is no real escaping that we are all one entire person, and that thought of that McLuhan has written extensively about plays so deeply into the concept of the village that it is just this. Here we are, where we're all, everything we do. And it's, to me, like, and it goes back even more with the village. Well, cars, remember what you said last week about, like, we can walk if there's a problem. We don't really trust cars. And if you notice, there's not a lot of technology in the village themselves. The upper, like, number 2 and his people use technology, but the citizens themselves are denied a lot of basic technology that's available at that time. So I think it's a really fascinating concept that they're trying to juxtapose in the prisoner to kind of push home this new notion of the world as a global village.
It's just, again, to me, it's kind of like nuts in a way that they're almost foreshadowing how the world's going to be.
Well, here's a so
You know
the
what I
line
mean?
is
It's like
what
crazy.
what has been created, an international community, a perfect blueprint for the world order. When the sides facing each other suddenly realize that they're looking into a mirror, they'll see that this is the pattern of the future. Number 6, the whole world as the village. Number 2, that is my dream. What's yours? To be the first man on the moon. And that happens too. Not necessarily number 6.
There's
but
a lot of insight. And I don't, how did McGoohan have any like contact with McLuhan at this time? I love their names. I'm assuming he's read some.
Mick.
Yeah, he must have read some of his writings, because McLuhan I consider him almost a Nostradamus-esque figure.
I was just gonna say that's so funny. I was thinking of Nostradamus,
which
that's
is
so
the
crazy.
things he wrote about were so much of what came to pass over the last 40 years, and it's so evident in this series.
Yeah, and it just it takes you out of it. It's like, I don't know, like I'm so open, I guess. So like if someone tells me a theory, I'm gonna have a person that will try it on to see if it works, and then if I'm like, no, but it's like to think that like these people, people that are writers and people that are artists, are in tune with something to be able to be this creative. But to think that in that creative juice flowing situation, you think of something that you have no idea is actually going to be reality. Like, it's so awesome.
Well, he predicted a lot of the various things. And McGoohan jokes about it. He's like, what came first, McGoohan or McLuhan?
Yeah.
And one of the things, again, because McLuhan studied a lot of things, and one of the things that he studied, he eventually became known for the global village, but also the idea of media and how it affects people. But his argument started in very simplistic terms. The argument is the way in which you watch media affects how you take in the media and how you react, right?
Yeah, it's basically reactive versus non-reactive media. So you look at television of the time frame was non-reactive. Like you were being given a message. You had no choice in this message. You were a receiver. Nowadays, in the last 20 years, 10 years more specifically, we as individuals get to choose our media. And if McLuhan could see this now, that it's completely subverted what it was then, how we choose to take in what we want.
But our behavior at the same time, our behaviors change, right? So the simple way is, if I literally design a different doorknob for you guys, I can change. If every day you use that same doorknob, my doorknob, I am forcing a different behavior pattern, right? And so we used to have phones, and we did it in a certain way. Now, people think everything is touchscreen. Why? Because they're conditioned by the medium of that thing, whatever it is, that, of course it has to be touchscreen.
Yeah.
Not even with technology. I'm going to take it a place further in my little conspiracy theorist world that I live in. But it's like, you look at the news now, like, yes, we have the option to choose any news that we want to, but pretty much all the news does is instill fear. Like, when's the last time you turned on the news and there was some, like, happy thing that, made you think out of the box? It's like they want us all to be in this village of the United States, so that, you know what I mean? There's a lot going on that's really terrible, but they want us to instill just a little bit of fear so that you don't think out of the box. And
well, I think Meredith, she was also saying it last time, even if you get to choose, now you're just going to choose, if I'm a right wing, then I'm all of the news that I'm going to choose. Exactly.
Yeah.
But in the same sense, I mean, within that choice, like, they're making you think you have a choice, but all the news stations, I believe, are similar in the sense that they will report most of the negative stuff to instill fear.
I wouldn't say that. So I'm just, as I've worked in news for 15 years leading up to this. We never had. I'll just gonna throw it out here. We never had like a doctrine where we're like, we got to be news. Like we have to push this message. We're not North Korea. The reason we do that is because that's what people want. It's very push and pull. It's like, if people didn't want all the negative stuff, we wouldn't report on it. That's why we have the e-block that's usually like puppies and, really nice happy stories. But the reality is people don't respond in test groups. They don't want to hear happy, good news. They want to hear all the horrible things like, oh my God, I don't want to go to the corner store now because it got knocked over last week. Or, people as a whole, it feeds off each other in a very negative way.
Well, that's what I feel like the reason why people want to hear that, which makes the hamster wheel spin, is because they they want to hear that there's something worse than what's going on in their life,
Yeah.
so that they feel okay with themselves.
Yeah.
And they feel content with just what they're doing. They don't want to be provoked to do something more. They don't want to be,
Which is what I find local news in LA being very weird for me. And sorry, this is a complete tangent here. And I promise I'll bring this back to McLuhan. It's all about celebrities and water main breaks and and things I, as a journalist, would never have reported on anywhere else in the country. And I find, and going back to this whole idea of how we ingest media and how it affects us, is that it really does play into where you live and what you do and what part of the world you live in, and having that, but if the local news here started changing what they reported on, if it was less like Justin Bieber cited at this club and maybe more a little bit about the drought that's going on, the people in turn who watch that media would change their outlook on things. So there is a lot of media controlling people's behaviors, and that's something that we've seen throughout history in the last specifically 100 years as a not necessarily a torture tactic, but a brainwashing tactic. And I find it very interesting that here in the village they don't really use that. You don't really have televisions. You have radio, you have the music to calm people, but they've still eschewed the concept of TV from these people.
Yeah.
Absolutely interesting.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we also didn't speak about that somehow I think ties into this is the idea when him and number 2 are talking, and he says, what are you going to do? I'm going to escape and come back.
I'm going to thumb my nose at you.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's a foreshadow of what perhaps happens. I mean, we'll talk about the argument of where he actually went ultimately. But, he didn't set the place on fire just yet. But who knows what can, he did certainly come back to he could have escaped in theory. But
there is something to be said that, no, I'm not just going to escape. I'm going to come back and prove that I am better and bigger than you. Like, he is a very confrontational man who has a huge ego.
Yeah.
Subsection 8. And it's amazing just to see how number 6 just wants to, it's interesting because you just start to see him breaking down maybe why he resigned, because he seems to have this arrogance authority.
See, I didn't read it as arrogance or authority, but I see where you're going with that. But I kind of read it as he wants to do right. He's kind of like, what you guys are doing here is so wrong on so many different levels. So not only am I going to get out, but then I'm going to come back and I'm going to handle you guys and make sure that this thing falls apart because this is not right. That's what I thought he was trying to say.
That's a good way of thinking about it. Yeah. I mean, so after she gets caught, I mean, just the interrogation of it, yes, number 2 says, she ultimately is she has the power. But yes, okay, she has the power, but nonetheless, you're using electricity and you're using words like, what was in your mind? Were you attempting suicide? Tell us what was in your mind. That
he was basically saying, commit suicide. Commit suicide. That's how I took that scene, was like, we're just going to keep throwing the word suicide in there till you are driven mad enough that you choose to do this yourself.
Yeah. And the room
I'm not going to lie. I was kind of a little bit with that scene. It was, and I don't know, I felt from the beginning that she was there to set up number 6. So that scene for me was like, of course she's not going to die. But then, her doing that, I don't know if she could be acting that well and be in cahoots with number 2. I felt like that scene kind of threw me a little bit. Yeah. I was like, what is really happening here? Yeah. So.
And it's one of those things, you're giving a lot, let's say, because it doesn't matter whether she's on the side or not. That's a lot of credit to give someone if they can make something, it only takes 3 seconds to get from here to there. And your room of error is 1 second. That's not a lot, had you said
to figure that out.
And how do you know the door's not locked?
Yeah, to figure that out, it was like she kind of had to know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely. And so, I think it speaks more of the village. Like, yes, there is an out ultimately, but again, your room of error is so small. And to your point, you don't know if the door's locked. Yeah. You don't. There's a lot of variables you have to figure out along the way to make that. Split open.
Yeah.
So
we kind of skipped over this, I think.
Go ahead. What do we got?
It said, did I hear this wrong? It said that they only could surveillance for 2 miles out when she was swimming. Is that
Yeah.
right? Or could they only send the ball out 2 miles?
They could only see, they could only
Yeah.
see, but after that, the radar would pick them up.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
Because what I saw in that was that the ball.
Rover.
Rover. I wanted to say Roger, and I knew that was wrong. I'm like, wait a minute, it's not Roger. I heard that it could only, like, what I thought they said was that it can only go 2 miles out. So when the scene, later, when it goes clearly a lot further than that, I'm like, wait a minute, did I miss something? So I guess it could go further. They could only.
Yeah, and that they had outposts throughout the waters.
So what could they only do for 2 miles if they could
They
surveillance
only-
and send
video-
Rover out?
visual.
surveillance.
Yeah.
But they saw them. How did they send Rover? Okay.
Well, because of radar. They had radar.
Because
So they just saw the bleep on the radar.
but were they really more than 2 miles out?
Yeah, you don't know. And could she be
well,
wearing
but they right,
Yeah.
because they said 30
Yeah.
miles, but that could be a bunch of crap.
Yeah. I mean, his watch was also. We'll get into that.
Absolutely. So
I'm so bad about jumping ahead. I
I
just
know.
want to tie it all together.
Yeah, there is.
I wanted to, we have a cooperation thing. Number 2 with number 6 says, okay, I'll take care of her, and I'm, it's all the whole joke about woodworking and all that was funny to me. But here we are. I want to talk about. Did you guys find it hilarious about criticism of modern art?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I hate modern art so much. That I'm like, oh my God, number 2, I love you. Thank you so much. So that whole piece he built was like, I don't see, where's number 2? I just don't see number 2.
And even when they're building it, right? So
Yeah.
there's a picture Stephen has up, or we'll bring up, it's when they're building it. Like, what is it? Like,
Yeah.
what do you
See,
think?
I read boat right away.
Yeah, I mean, I thought boat right away too because of the shape, but he's like, yeah, I mean, I can see the shape. Does that represent Jesus being crucified on the cross? Does that maybe a little bit of that?
How about the word escape? It means what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean that. It means what you think it means.
Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah.
Oh, and I love, there's been a lot of essays and things like that about the woman who just agrees, like, oh, I'm starting to see
Yeah.
it. Like, no, you're not.
It's like when it's like, go on, I'm so sorry.
No,
go on.
go.
No, I was, go.
When I first, this is a little bit of a tangent, but it totally makes sense. When I first moved here, I moved in with a friend of mine's sister, and we made an art gallery in her garage. So, like, literally every week I was at art openings because they were there. And, like, I can't tell you how much. It's here, though. Art in LA, it's very, very different than, I mean, modern art, too, but it's like that whole thing of, like, what is art? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it
what
all
is
just
art?
comes back to what is art. But it's the same thing as everything else is. It's relationships, so you can get your stuff hung at the gallery, and if your stuff's hung at the gallery, then you have some sort of credibility, and you put a price tag on it, and then someone will want to buy it. But in the same sense, it's like, whatever, like, why is this art? Like, I could spill my drink on this piece of paper and blow it up and frame it and call it art.
And that's what McGoohan was saying. Was that like here you have all these literal interpretations of number 2, which is a more classic style of art, and then you have his weird like structure, his installation piece, if you will, and everyone's sitting here trying to interpret it or like, why isn't it number 2? And this is I took this as McGoohan's own like big screw you to the art world of I'm just gonna like make a little point here and then like no, it is what I say it is. This is freedom. This is escape because I'm going to escape in this boat when you all aren't looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really funny. I liked it.
That made me happy.
Absolutely. And, anything can be art, but not everything is art.
Don't say that to an art teacher.
Yeah.
Why? An art teacher taught me that.
Wow, really?
Wait, say it again.
Anything can be art, right? To your
Yeah.
paper, you could spill it, but does that mean that it is automatically art? No. It can be art, but it's not art right away.
Unless you claim it.
Well, that's
So
what I'm
this is
saying.
my art.
Well, that's the process. I
Right.
think now,
Guys, I have to build this piece right now. Megan. This
if
is
you guys
freedom
aren't
right here.
watching,
$25,000.
Okay, guys. This is I'm gonna actually call this the Global Village. Right here, what I have is some paper with a coffee mug and a notebook and my iPad on top. And the iPad symbolizes that we are all one with each other because we can talk to each other, and the coffee cup is our souls draining into it.
And by the way, what I loved,
Sorry.
number 2 didn't pick this
I'm a
up.
jerk.
Right, I love it. It's funny.
Number 2 picked it up, but he didn't in this instant, but he had noted before. Number 6 has a sense of humor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the ways to survive is if you can have a sense of humor, especially about yourself and whatever
Your
it is,
situation.
then you can survive. Mm-hmm. Right. And there's this was absolutely a phenomenal scene for that
Which
reason.
is a super powerful statement. Like, I feel like there's a lot of super powerful, I mean, like, sense of humor, I mean, for me, at least in my world, like, having a sense of humor and being able to, like, be light about life in general is such a huge, like, tool to put in your tool belt of life. You know what I mean? So I like how they're driving that home.
Absolutely. And then I didn't see this first time because he buys the quilt, and he says, my life's work is my own reward. But obviously I can't reject the what the committee has done here. But let me give the lady, and so it's so symbolic that here he is sailing away, and the sail is number 2's face. I absolutely love that. Phenomenal. It's
And it's like I guess he had to know someone was gonna make a quilt or a rug or something, which really honestly practically I thought was probably way too heavy or porous to actually catch wind, but we're gonna ignore that right now.
I know. I was like, what is that?
I just want to myth bust some of these episodes.
I know.
But the fact that I just this is why I love this show so much, because it's steeped with symbolism and amazing quotes.
And for me, it was like he's right there with him.
Yeah.
Like, even though he thinks he's getting away, he's
still
right there in the
watching
boat.
him.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, man.
And so now they're on this boat, escaping, going places.
And this, by the way, the front of the episode was kind of slower. And then, if you really think about all of this stuff that we're going to talk about happens in 10 minutes or less.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This whole escape.
This montage, if you will.
Yeah, Rover comes at them. Rover gets shot, which originally
Not
was...
Roger.
Not Roger.
Sorry.
Rover was supposed to make it all the way to the beach, but he didn't, he got shot along
Rover
the way.
has a hard time getting out of the water, it seems like.
I'm sorry. How did this dude know when the time they were gonna arrive to sail over 30 miles with a quilt sail to be there with his gun out ready to shoot
He
Rover?
was just waiting for that whole entire time. He's like, I'm just gonna, in case something happens, I'm
He's
gonna
just
shoot.
sleeping there with his gun.
I want to know, you would think that they would have made Rover a little bit more, like, weapon defensible, like those are just some buckshot he was shooting at him.
Yeah.
I mean, first off, it's a weather balloon.
Right,
It's an electrocuting, man-eating weather balloon.
suffocating balloon. I thought it would have been more interesting that they just kind of outran Rover.
Yeah.
The whole shooting Rover thing for me was kind of like, really?
Also, one shot, man. Should have gone in one shot.
Yeah, there was then these like little like bullet marks. Come on. What is he shooting with a BB gun?
God, Rover's just, he keeps on trucking.
Yeah.
Can't put Rover down.
And then but time out. We forgot to talk about Rover's babies.
Oh my God, we didn't talk about Rover's babies from earlier. Rover's asexual and splits off.
Okay, talk about Rover's babies.
When she was swimming away.
I know.
Oh, they needed Rover and 2 Rover babies to bring back one woman.
Yeah.
Rover has suffocated 2
Also,
men, but
just
one woman,
let
they need Rover babies.
Let the Freudian symbolism of that scene sink into you, and I won't say anything more on that.
Yeah, I get it.
I get it too.
I just, wanted to make sure the viewers...
The Rover babies.
The Rover babies. Absolutely.
I didn't need the drawing, but I appreciate it. I think you should show the viewers your drawing.
No, I'm not going to. But yeah, so Rover, so now I like the etymology of Rover. Rover can... I'm blanking on my biology term. When you have an organism that can split in half.
Synthesis? No.
No. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do.
Mitosis. So Rover reproduces through mitosis, and Rover, despite being a latex-based weather balloon, can take a couple
threw
shots.
the latex in there.
I'm just assuming. I don't know. What else would have been made out of the time? Polycarbonate?
No, I believe latex. With
Yeah.
the baby latex balls.
Amazing.
Anyway, sorry.
Well, Rover's side, we got one of the most significant. We get the
Okay,
watch, right?
Yeah.
So we get a decrypted message and the watch to make sure, because his was broken.
Yeah.
And then we're off on this montage of do. Now, is it a dream?
But time out. Like, I'm sorry. I just need to understand, and maybe it's clear and I missed it, but I need to understand why this guy's there waiting with a crate that they'll both fit into.
Because this was planned. He had.
Who did? How did they get to talk to
How did
anyone?
Nadia talk to him?
How did she talk to him? There was no communication unless I missed it.
No, through stars and patterns.
Oh, through the stars. Got it. Freaking stars. How did I miss
Paper
that?
airplane.
No, really. Like, did I miss something? No, it was like just supposed to be that she was communicating.
You could. Remember, number 6 says you can be seen, but you can't be heard.
I know why.
Go ahead.
Because she had been tracking. Remember, she had mentioned how she's like, I knew about the village, and that was kind of her like. That had become her secret special mission. So maybe she had been planning to infiltrate the village all along, and that dialogue was cut. And so maybe this was her backup plan. I'm going to go with that.
Just seemed a little bit unbelievable
It was because of all the cuts.
Here's the thing. There's no mention of... There's very few scenes that got cut from script to what ended up happening.
Right.
But I don't think it negates
Yeah.
your argument at all.
Yeah.
Because she did make mention of that. That's, she got too close to this.
Yeah,
And
that's how I read it.
And then I read it as soon as they were put in the box, I was like, they're being put in coffins. It was very coffin-like in
oh,
there.
no, I didn't even think about that.
It was, if you saw it, it was very coffin-like.
I just really appreciated the two shot of them in the wooden box with the line
they
down
could
the
talk
middle.
to each
That
other.
was,
Well,
And
I
then
just
she was
appreciated
getting
that-
sick and
I know.
because he might have a wife waiting. I mean, what?
She was way too concerned about his personal. Well, maybe that was her digging for information. Was that maybe he left because of a woman, and he's like, no, there's no one.
It was a lot.
I'm alone forever.
I mean, here's the thing. Honestly, like, if you guys have traveled, you have 12 hours to kill, just like clockwork, and we'll talk about that because that 12 hours, just like clockwork, it just happened.
Everything was perfectly on time.
Absolutely, but you just forget that fact for a moment, and you got to talk about something.
No, you sleep the entire time.
I'd sleep. I mean,
That's
no,
what he
I would
did.
talk, but I wouldn't be
Yeah.
like, do you have a wife or at home?
What else do?
I would be like, so what's the plan, man? When we get there, how do we get out of the box?
She was just like, I just want to talk about things, and he's like, no, just oh my god, I have a headache. Oh my god, can I just sleep?
Yeah.
This is why I'm single. This is why I'm not dating. Like that was the impression I got. Like I felt like McGoohan was kind of like, oh my god, this is unnecessary dialogue.
Yeah.
Hilarious, yeah. I did enjoy that. I just liked the fact that they were separated too. Like instead of just being in the crate.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, no, he didn't want that. Like McGoohan, like we knew this. McGoohan was so adamant that number 6 couldn't have a love interest. They had to have a physical board between the two of them to make sure that no funny
There
business
wasn't,
happened.
though. You'd be all like hitting into each
know.
other when they toss you around.
Also, what about the bathroom? 12 hours. 12 hours.
I thought as soon as
Hold
they
it.
landed, I thought about that.
We don't know if he needs to use the bathroom, but he's ready for a drink.
Yeah, yes.
The prodigal son returns,
Yep.
and we see Colonel J.
Yep.
Colonel J. Yeah, and we okay, so this is where it threw me. This is where I was like, okay, no, they couldn't. Like, this isn't the village. He got out because he is going to, these are people he knows. He recognized two of the members, and they go into this office, and he's having a dialogue with someone he obviously is established. And if you've watched Danger Man, you know Colonel J. But this is where it got me. This is where I'm like, no, this is where we're going to find out that he's still in the village, because they pull out the whiskey, and he takes a drink, and he doesn't react to it. And I'm like, oh, well, then that must be alcohol.
Yeah.
See, for me, it was so, as soon as they got out and all the blinds were closed. I mean, he's been saying Big Ben, I want to see Big Ben. They're close enough to hear the chimes of Big Ben, and the windows are going to be closed, so you can't see Big Ben.
Yeah. And
I was
the
like, no
earlier
way.
foreshadow, remember, an exact replica of her room. They made an exact replica of his room.
Yeah.
And if you really kind of dissect it, obviously it's an exact replica of what is over, what the office that he's used to. But the maps and the lamps and things like that, exactly the same as in the village,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is interesting because it just goes to that point of like it's a mirror image of itself.
So what the hell did they do with him for 12 hours?
Was it a dream or did they just take him on a joyride?
I mean, because we saw externals, I feel they actually did go through the process of
I
taking
do
him through
too.
all these places, because why
Yeah.
would they give the viewer that perspective?
Yeah, I feel like they would have would have been more clear that it was a dream.
Yeah,
if
they
that's what it
probably
was.
would have done some more of that, the weird like imaging video stuff from the opening sequence, if
Yeah.
it was supposed to be a more disjointed fever dream.
And it's more powerful to let him
Mm-hmm.
think that he completely got away with it, and then be like, "So sorry."
Yeah. And then to find out that the people that you thought you could trust are the very ones keeping you.
Well,
Captive.
that was, I really like how they played it off because rather than him be, hey, welcome back,
Yeah.
we've missed you, it's very aggressive, which is the opposite of what this number 2 has been doing with him. And it's like, you resigned. Why are you here? You come back with her. Who is she? So I need answers.
Yeah.
You know, I can't let you enter into my life. I need answers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think he was expecting that. Like, I think he was expecting because it was very like, they were all too prepared. They were all too ready for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All down to the last thing, except for what, because the watch, in theory, they wouldn't.
And
yes, they could have known
that's
about.
what gets him.
Yeah.
And that's what sets him off to realize, in the end.
Because he was gonna say it, and
Yeah.
he was a long time ago. It was a matter of conscience, but he was ready to spill his soul,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
But it's
Which
because
is-
they screwed up.
Yeah. Which is a nice little tease, because clearly there's a distinct reason
Yeah.
that you guys probably know and I don't.
but I mean, just the fact of, does a matter of conscience tell you enough? All that you need to know?
No. I mean, yes and no, because when you think about the conscientious objectors of World War I and II and further conflicts, it sometimes it could just be as simple of, I don't agree with this and I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I mean,
Well, that's the point.
Yeah.
If their side is exactly as the communist side, good and evil are mirrored, so there is no good, there is no bad, then it's a matter of conscience to say, hey, the same exact methods that the village is using, he could have been a part of for a long time,
Yeah.
and he's resigned of that. So
But what
to
that
me, it
makes
tells me enough.
Well, no, it makes it more interesting for me, because it's like, in all of that, in all the mirrors of back and forth of what people do, it's like, so what's that thing that, like, what's the straw that broke the camel's back that made him leave? Because clearly he's been a part of all that back and forth for a time before that.
Yeah, I think
What-
you have to define that for yourself.
Yeah, what did he see? What did he know? What did he even possibly suggest to make him so upset about this?
Right.
It was so meta. He saw a TV show about himself.
No.
He's like, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go and tell somebody I love.
Oh yeah, and then he
back.
pulls the plug.
And you know what? I like that Nadia at the end of it kind of gets the power shifts to her because she
Yeah.
says, it was a good effort, and I'll write that in my report.
I'll
So
make
it's
sure
like,
they know.
it's like even though number 2 was the one behind this, he's expendable just the same as much, and we
Right.
knew
Yeah.
he always would be. So, it's,
You know what else stood out to me was when, we jumped over this, but I just remembered it, when they were saying, when we saw them in the boat, and number 2 said, get 1 through 5 or something like that. So it referenced to me, I heard that is like 1 through 5 part of the like staff, so to speak. Does that have
we
any?
don't know.
Yeah.
You guys don't know either, or we don't know yet in this.
Well, I
episode.
won't.
Well,
if
I'm
I
not
do,
gonna-
I won't tell you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
That's a spoiler.
Okay.
We won't go there.
Kidding.
we won't go there. But let's talk about some of these
Yeah.
bigger ideas, right?
Okay.
I thought right off the bat when we open up after the pseudo Orwellian postmodern sequence, we get democratically elected by you, the people, of course. And so we're talking. We were talking about how we choose our own newspapers and things like that. So I found that.
Well, especially given the fact that, I mean, in even though Parliament's elected, Britain's still a monarchy.
Yeah.
So it's interesting they're pushing the democratic ideas. I found that just interesting.
I could go off on a whole tangent, but I'm gonna not.
But it's
But I like your
it's the same
Well,
with
it's just like even Democratic, it's like, I don't know, like I know people should vote. Like when you think about democracy in here in the US, like I know people should vote. I understand all that, but it's like there's the Electoral College, there's all kinds of other stuff that play into voting. So, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, but that's what it's saying, is that your vote doesn't really matter in the end.
exactly.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, is pretty much.
Yeah.
And of course, that can also be communism. We spoke last time about
Right.
a lot of these things were free, right? So communists, here's anything that you need to use.
Yeah.
It's for free, but know ultimately who you're
Right.
is controlling you. Which speaks to the point that, okay, we supposedly can elect whoever we want, but at the end of the day, we're all lifers.
Yep. But that's interesting because number 2 says that if Nadia complied, he'd let her go. Like, number 2 made it seem like there is a way out of.
But where do they go? That's the whole thing that you don't need a...
Put them to sleep and wake up back in their own bed. I don't know.
And then what?
They're brainwashed and they have amnesia and they have no idea where they've ever been.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Is that better than death or suicide?
Well, I mean, I would have to say that for some people, being there is almost like death.
Yeah. For number
Certainly.
6, it certainly is.
Yeah.
Just a lot of stuff going on in there. And by the way, this is so. Speaking of the art theory, right? And being it is what it is. McGoohan always found it hilarious that in many ways we are doing exactly that. We are literally over analyzing the SHIT out of this TV series.
Yeah.
What if it just is what it is?
I mean, it could be it is what it is, but there are too many similarities as into what has happened. I mean, especially now, 45 years later, like there's so many similarities and stuff. You know what I mean? Like I feel like, I don't know, I don't feel like we're overanalyzing it.
Well, but at the same time, he even said, McGoohan said, he's like, I don't want to classify this as a sci-fi show because sci-fi at the time was like 2001 and very esoteric stories in which people used lofty ideas, in a futuristic landscape. And I think there is a little bit of his own defiance to the idea that, you should just look at something for what it is. So I'm going to make something that is so out there, so beyond people are going to think so hard, and I'm just going to present them in my simple idea, like this is what it is. But he never really goes out and states what he wants, though.
I don't know that I buy that. I mean, yes, maybe that's, what it is, but it's just, I feel like he's a smart guy. Like he's got to know, like this is a very different show from like some bubblegum show that they could have had on TV. You know what I mean? Like there's a way that things, like a lot of shows, maybe something from episode 2 doesn't follow to episode 15. You know what I mean? Like in here, I feel like things are kind of going to keep adding up.
Well, and especially for television at the time, there wasn't really anything like this.
Yeah, like there's a lot
still
of...
isn't.
No.
Right. So I feel like, I mean, maybe he was just smart in the sense that this show is just smart. So other like-minded smart people want to think about it. And a lot of shows these days and those days don't require thought. It's just to be entertained and taken out of your own life. But I definitely feel like...
But then is that a matter of the idea of, number 2 says to him, you have a lot of self-importance that almost leads to egoism. So, are we better by just by watching this show and thinking that we understand it? Are we putting a value to ourselves if we're better than somebody else?
No, I don't think we're putting a value to ourselves. I think we're just saying that this is something that interests us, so we're going to talk about it. I mean, I could be, you know what I mean? Like some of the things, Snow White, really, that can be so off. You know what I mean? And someone could watch it and think something totally different. But the show... It evokes people. It makes people want to have a conversation about it, where some other shows don't.
I just love the idea that at the end of the day, McGoohan could have been the biggest troll. Like he could have just been setting us all up. Like be like, here, I'm gonna give you something really weird. Have fun, enjoy. I'm gonna go die now.
But that
Could have
in
been.
itself is brilliant.
I know that if that was
That's
if
like
that's his
more
end game, that
brilliant.
makes me. I'm like, all right,
Yeah, that's like
good on
almost-
you, sir.
Yeah.
It's funny in that way because if the point of entertainment is to entertain, David Foster Wallace wrote a book about, it's called Infinite Jest, about this very same thing. So wouldn't the perfect thing be something that you just want to watch over and over to the point that you didn't want to eat, sleep, drink, piss, shit, whatever, right?
I love that you spelled it out
I
earlier,
know, and now
but
you
you're
just-
like, well,
No, I just had to make a point.
pooping.
Yeah.
Just had to make it. Yeah, I just had to make
No,
it.
it's true.
Yeah. But I think with this show too, my father lived in England for 16 years, so I was actually talking to him about the show. I feel like this show, like people that have watched this show have an opinion about it, they have thoughts about it, and it's resonated somewhere with them. Like people could ask me if I've watched the show 20 years ago, and I could be like, yeah, I watched it.
Yeah, Smurfs are great.
But
you
I
know?
wouldn't be like, I am not a number, I am a person. Like I wouldn't start quoting the show, and it's like all kinds of random people.
Yeah,
I think do.
I do wonder if the people involved in the show at the time realized the impact it was going to have, not just later, but at the time, because, you know, the 60s were an interesting time in terms of, you know, post World War II, you know, you do have that Iron Curtain, but it wasn't quite where it was like in 10 years from then. But there was just this almost, people at the time were getting comfortable. They were just getting really comfortable in their lives. They'd started to forget about the war. You know, we had more comforts. You know, people were kind of going out and starting to enjoy life. And this show, when it came out, really made people start to question like where they stood in their own country with their own government. And it was I put The Prisoner with any of the novels from that time period, you know, 1984, Fahrenheit 451. The Prisoner, to me, is a social commentary.
Yeah, but you asked the point, did they know? I think George Markstein had an idea of kind of what he wanted the thing to be, and Pat McGoohan kind of knew what he wanted it to be. Outside of perhaps those two people, and, you know, again, we can argue George Markstein one way or the other, I don't think anybody knew.
Yeah.
I don't think you can know. It's like almost like nowadays.
I think Patrick McGoohan did, much like,
But
let's
he
say the
would- he could
Wachowskis
want
knew
it.
what they wanted to do with The Matrix.
Yeah.
Right.
But no one else was like, we know we're making something cool, and we'll just go with it.
Yeah.
But what the hell we're making, we have no idea until we see it.
But I feel like there's not a real formula for that. You know what I mean? It's almost like nowadays how people, like, things go viral, so to speak, and people are like, oh, I want to make a viral video. Like, there's no business formula to make a viral video. It just either catches on or not. Like, there are a lot of shows that people, I mean, you think about shows nowadays like 24.
But
that's got a cult following.
I don't want to
almost.
discredit. Here's the thing, right? Yes, viral's something though that just happens, right?
Right.
Whereas this is, man, as you said, he's thought a lot of these thoughts. You know, he's kind of, this is a reflection of his time on Danger Man, his life, what he was reacting to the world as it is. So I don't want to discredit it. It's not like it just happened because he got lucky. These are things that he was thinking about. And yes, there are artists in the world that they have the ability to, you know, and this isn't just the only thing that he's ever created. He's created things before and after that were successful. So, and you know, this is the one that sticks a lot. But at the same time, to have that longevity, it's not a viral video.
Lucky. I'm not saying he got lucky or that it's like that. What I'm saying is there's not a formula out there to make a television show and it guarantees a certain following or respect or thought about it or provokes a talk about it. That's what I'm saying. There's no, or else everyone would do it with their shows.
You just have to master your craft.
Yeah, I
That's
don't
what I'm
think
saying.
he was
so
trying
whatever
to...
he did it so well that happened. It's such the sense with like a viral video. Someone does something so well that they get a following, but someone else can't just replicate that by following certain steps. Like you just have to be that good, and then the following will come. It's kind of what I'm trying to say.
I don't think he set out to make a successful show. I think he set out to make a show that he wanted to make. And that's why things that become successful are from that passion.
I agree with you 100%. Yeah, it's not like he was like, let me make this show that 45 years later, they're going to be talking about it after AfterBuzz TV.
Well, again, but here's the thing: you can't ever have the goal in mind.
Right.
You know, same with AfterBuzz TV. There was a show, okay, just do good shows, build it up. You know, people want to do it with us, okay, and then all of a sudden there was an audience for it, and it's like, okay, well, we responded to the audience, but there, you know, people ask, what's the 5-year plan? I don't know. What's the
Talk
5
about
minute?
TV shows.
Yeah, what's the 5-minute plan? I don't know. No idea. But you just kind of go with that. So, Interestingly enough, in this episode, we also kind of had slight different rules. You know, in terms of the village, there's now curfew in place.
Right.
So it seems a lot more. There's more rules in place, and we also learned that you can't have any weapons.
No.
All right, I'll build my own.
Right.
But that's against the rules too. But
Surely you can turn a blind
Yeah.
eye,
Right.
and they did.
Yeah.
Because they knew he was going to get caught.
They
back
knew
anyway.
the whole time.
So we have a couple minutes left because Meredith has to go off and do the Marvel movie news show on the Popcorn Talk Network.
I have to go all the way across the courtyard to our other studios.
She has to dive into a whole different world, so you should definitely check that out with her. But I want to make sure that if there's anything that you guys want to specifically talk about that we haven't hit, I want to make sure that we hit it.
I'm really happy we touched on the whole global village concept, and I really think, again, just going back to overall with this episode, that it just reinforces the fact that number 6 is a prisoner in his own, and sometimes to an extent it's through his own doing, because I go back to I think he did believe he had his way out, and I think he let his hopes get above him, where as a good spy you should never get too hopeful, and I think in this episode he kind of made himself a prisoner.
Got it. Steph C.
The only other thing that stood out to me that I want to talk about for a minute here is that clearly there's a journal of each number's progress. Is that what we're learning? Okay.
Yeah.
And, number 8 says to number 2 that I'm going to give a good report of all this, don't worry type thing. So, I don't know. Is she more in charge than number 2?
We don't know. Whose side are we on? And there's an alternate version of Chimes of Big Ben that has more extended scenes. It's slightly different. It's on the DVDs. It's not as complete. The one that you would watch is the complete version. The alternate version is even more rough. It's probably not even color corrected, actually.
Is that the one that I watched?
No, I gave you the good one. Don't worry. See what I'm saying? But if you had a question of that, imagine what the other one would be.
Right.
This was one of the original 7 intended episodes. Obviously the 10 other ones were done kind of later if we didn't talk about that. And they were the other 10 were outlined in a matter of 2 days over the weekend. That's how crazy it is. So we'll see. We'll start to compare some differences. Just a couple of fun trivia things that we didn't quite get to talk about last time. The sound effects of the thunder is now in every sound effects person's library called Prisoner.
Really?
It's called Prisoner
Really?
Thunder.
Isn't it called the Foley, or what's it called?
Well, that's how they make Foleying is the process of making noise,
Yeah.
but the say it's like the prisoner dot, AVI or whatever, MP4
Oh,
or
like
something.
anyone can.
Like Steven,
Yeah.
play our canned audience clapping, right? There we go. Maybe.
Just kidding.
There we go. All right. So it'd be like that.
Yeah.
Like if you need canned thunder, you have it.
Oh,
And
we
it's just-
need it to open our episodes from now on. Why is that not happening here at
Well, we've
Studio
been switching
Phil?
it up.
Yeah,
We're
all right.
trying to be individual.
I'm just trying to. I like some thunder.
All right. And speaking of, CBS, when they bought it, they didn't get it either. So they Lou Grade, who we talked about last time, invited them to set, and they didn't still get it. And so he's like, number one, how do you deal with McGoohan? Number 2, what the hell is this? He's like, I just let him do what he wants. That's
funny.
it. All right. So,
What are we watching next?
A, B, and C, which used to be called 1, 2, and 3, and a whole slew of other names, but that's what we'll do next time, A, B, and C. So go ahead, rewatch that episode. Well, that's what we'll be talking about. Don't forget to rate. Don't forget to subscribe. However, we've made it pretty easy. You can watch us on youtube.com/AfterBuzzTV. You can listen to us on iTunes. You can listen to us on SoundCloud, all for free $99.
Woo! Yes, I like free 99.
All right, and also, whether one of the great things is, if you want to participate along as we do this each week, that's great. If for some reason you find us 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the line, you know what? It's still great to participate because I'm sure Steph Z is still going to be checking her Twitter then, which is?
It is at IAMSTEFZ. Yes, tweet me.
And that's Instagram too?
Yes, that's my Instagram too. And you can check out my website, IamStephZ.com. Woo!
You can find me at MPLACKO on Twitter and Instagram and meredithplacco.com.
And, of course, AfterBuzz TV, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that fun stuff. Once again, thank you guys from 6 of 1 Appreciation Society. April 17th is the meetup. Check out their website. Get some more info on that, and we'll see you. Well, we'll be seeing you.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.